You're listening to Super Power Up with multidimensional master, superpower expert, and former counterintelligence agent, Tonya Dawn Recla. If you're ready to disrupt reality, then sit down, strap in, and prepare to experience the show that proves there is no spoon.
Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, your superpower expert. And today we're talking about Be You, the world will adjust. And it's coming off of the last week's episode with Amazing Robyn, where we talked about expanding beyond normal. And in that episode, if you didn't get a chance to check it out, please be sure to go check it out. It was such a great conversation about really taking a hard look at what we view as reality, how we view reality. And when we talk about being you, right, I think that's a catchphrase. It's a cliche that gets overused. It's been co-opted, whatever that means. It's almost too watered down at this point. It's like, of course, like who else am I going to be? But when we talk about being you and the world will adjust, what we're going to talk about is not just being you, like as the person you know yourself to be, but how does you being you in the way that you've always known yourself to be match up to your world changing around you, right? I talk to people, tens of people every day. Well, on a good day, right? Tens of people every day who are wanting to change the world, want to have an impact, want to get their message out there, all of that great stuff. I know that so many of you feel called into that. And there's a relationship between being the you know yourself to be in that big expansive space versus being the you that you've always been, because the you that you've always been lives in the world that you've always lived in, right? The whole saying of, how a tiger can't change its stripes. Well, the reason why a tiger can't change its stripes is a tiger's pretty attached to having its stripes, right? Of course not. I don't know that a tiger thinks about it, but we identify tigers with stripes. And so if you take that out and say, okay, what does that have to do with me? It's kind of a silly little phrase. Why would you bring it up? Of all those people I talk to who want to change the world and want to make a difference, when they come up against something that makes them uncomfortable, they very clearly state to the universe, I don't want to make a change and I don't want to do something different. Right? You think this doesn't apply to you, then ask yourself, when was the last time you had a conversation with somebody where you started to get a little bit irritated or frustrated? Maybe it was a customer service representative. Maybe it was somebody at a drive-through that didn't get your order quite right. Maybe it was a boss or an employee or a coworker. Maybe it was a spouse or a child who said the wrong thing at an inconvenient time. And how did you choose to respond? Right? Well, I was irritated, like they interrupted me, right? And we kind of relax into these notions of what's acceptable behavior. Well, acceptable behavior for you in the world that you live in perpetuates the world that you live in. End of story. So how do we make that change? And a lot of times we're waiting for the world to change around us so that we know how to be different within it. It doesn't work that way. We have to be different within the world that we see before it can change around us. So when we come back from the break, we're going to talk about exactly how to do that. But before I cut to break, I want to make sure those of you who listen, and I know you all are listening and we appreciate it, and you're consuming the material, we hear from you, and we know, the numbers just keep growing. I really want to encourage you to move beyond passive listening, right? That the network is an attunement mechanism. It's a broadcasting mechanism for things that are fairly counterculture in mass media. And that's all very well and good, and it's having an impact. But what happens when you say, wait, I want more, right? I want to live in this world that they're talking about. I want to experience these things. I want to have the impact that they're having. I want to have the impact that the guests who come on their show are having. There are steps to take that get you from here to there, right? And if you're interested in that, you feel like it's time, then be sure to go check out the programs page at superpowerexperts.com. Click on Superpower Programs and just sit with it, right? Not a sales pitch, just sit with it. Sit with the content, talk to spirit, pray, meditate, whatever's your shtick to do there. Walk around in nature and just see, does this feel good? Does this feel like a yes in every cell of my body? Does this feel expansive to me? And if it's a yes, then reach out to us. Send a message to experts@superpowerexperts.com and just say, hey, I want to know more. I'm interested in talking about a program, or I'm always happy to do a free mini superpower design session to go over some of your predisposed superpowers and give you a little taste of some of the work that we do here. Um, but here's the catch, folks. If you're hungry for your world to change and you like what we're talking about and our resonance agrees with you, it feels yummy and you enjoy our shows, then there's a chance that there's a body of work involved in this that you're also attracted to. And that's really, at the heart of what we exist for. It's to support people in those transformations. So check it out if it feels like it's something that you're curious about. But regardless, stick with us. We're talking today about Be You, the world will adjust. And when we come back from the break, I'm going to go over some things that you can do now to start looking at your world a little bit differently. So stay tuned and I'll be right back. Hello, everyone. This is Tonya Dawn Recla, Executive Director of Superpower Experts, and we want to thank each of you for making Superpower Up the #1 podcast network for personal development and spiritual growth. Because people like you have the courage to say that mindfulness, healthy living, disrupting reality, the pursuit of consciousness, responsible entrepreneurship, and radical parenting matter, we now amass over 1 million downloads monthly in more than 90 countries. Our numbers keep growing because there are far more people willing to live divergently than mass media wants to acknowledge. For you, the change makers, the light bearers, the way showers, we say thank you. If you're ready to take the next step in your evolution, go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the superpower quiz. And as Neva Lee Recla, our youngest podcaster, likes to remind us, remember, we all have superpowers and we can change the world. Awesome. Well, you're listening today to Disrupt Reality. I'm Tonya Dawn Recla, and today's show is all about Be You, the world will adjust. And it's piggybacking off of last week's episode of Expanding Beyond Normal with Amazing Robyn. And what I alluded to before the break was this concept of there's work that has to happen, right, for your world to change. That doesn't sound very fun. I get it. Like the idea of like sitting on your couch and imagining wealth or the right relationship or success or whatever it is that drives you, just magically appearing is very appealing to most of us. And if we're honest, there's an obvious kind of impediment that's happening in our existence in some aspect of our life, whether it be in relationships or in business success or with your home life. Well, whatever the case may be for you, maybe with money. And it just seems like no matter how great everything else is going in your life, there are these sticking points. Well, it's worth taking a hard look at how you're showing up in those sticking points, right? Many of us have behaviors and stuff that we don't even know that we do. And we don't realize that we're broadcasting something very different to the universe than what we think we're saying to it. And so this conversation about being you isn't as simple as saying, just relax into all of your old programs and behaviors, because again, nothing changes when you do that. So it starts with being willing to ask some questions like, what would it look like if I chose a different response, right? How does the world really shift around me? And am I waiting, maybe even subconsciously, maybe totally unwittingly, am I waiting for this magical moment when the world is going to just look different and then I know that it's safe for me to act different? It doesn't work that way. The world is a projection of what we broadcast, the signals that we're broadcasting. And if you're unable to maintain some of those higher frequency elements for longer stretches of time, then you're probably starting to feel a little bit crazy as you're like looking at the world and it looks like it always has, but then you have these moments of enlightenment where it looks totally different and you can visualize it differently. And then you find yourself back in that other version of reality. Well, that's an indicator to us that you're kind of straddling two different worlds. And in that space, a choice has to be made, a decision has to be made, because what happens is you start stretching yourself too far, right? The knowingness continues to evolve. The personhood does not, whether we're talking about the body or whatever it is your sticking points happen to be, always housed in the body somewhere. But it's not necessarily what we think of as body work. So don't check out on that notion of it. It's not like, oh, I'm going to tell you have to go exercise more or do yoga. It doesn't work like that. It's an understanding that supersedes how most people think about it. But if you're in that chasm, then there is some rewiring that kind of has to happen. We call it upgrading the operating system, right? We use a software called all about superpowers because it's fun and it's interesting and it works, and that's how the information was downloaded to me. But you can really use whatever software you want. But if you're not upgrading your operating system to be able to hold some of these more expansive concepts about reality, then you're never going to integrate it. You'll never embody it. All you can do is know it and understand it, but it stays out there and unattainable for you. And so when we talk about the world adjusting, we're not talking about the idea of like, oh, who cares what people think of you? Just be you. No, no, this goes beyond that in the fact that who you are being dictates how the world materializes in front of you. Plain and simple. And so if you are being who you've always been, then the world will materialize in the way it always has. If you really want the world to change, you have to start looking, okay, where am I willing to make some changes? And go easy on yourself. Make the changes that are fun to make. Make the easy ones first and get some transferable kind of confidence in that. And then start looking at the areas that maybe are a little bit more painful. And when you go to attack those, if you will, when you go to like address them, it's okay to ask for support. It's okay to ask for others guidance. And sometimes we can narrow or straighten out those curves a little bit for you, or we can move some of the rocks out of the way that you keep stumbling upon, or we can simply love you as you walk your inevitable path. But regardless of whatever it is that you're kind of butting up against that keeps you in the reality that you continue to say you don't want, but have obviously gotten comfortable in, whatever those things are, certainly we can assist you. And the transitory space is our space, that the transitions are our specialty, particularly for those of you who know yourself to be change agents, light workers. You know you're getting downloads, you're getting information, you have a sense that there's this purpose you're supposed to be stepping into, and you're just not, right? And every time you gear up and you want to, you take a step forward, and then inevitably something happens to pull you back in. Well, again, you're probably standing right there in that chasm, straddling those two worlds. And at some point, you have to reconcile that. Reconcile that to yourself. Make no mistake about it. Those two worlds can't be reconciled. They're almost polar opposites. There's a huge frequency differentiation between them. And that discrepancy is not crossed by willing yourself to do it, right? There are practices and techniques and other things that you need to employ, all different kinds of modalities and techniques that can be used. We just happen to have a set of tools that are in resonance with the information that you receive here, and with the training that got downloaded through me. And so that's what we're in service to. We learned a long time ago that resistance isn't just futile, it's painful. So we don't resist. We do what we're here to do, and we do it the way that we're told to do it. And we are extremely good at it. But that's our gap. That's our space that we stand in confidence. And we can train you to do the same. There is so much work to be done here that, and so many of you are waking up to your potentialities. We would love the opportunity to help you hone that, expand that, get confident in that, comfortable in that, and really, truly not just have the impact on the world that you're here to have, but reshape your reality in support of that. We know that there are a lot of variables that come into it, and it's not as simple as saying, figure out what you're passionate about and go make money, right? It doesn't work that way. There are other things involved, and we have a very practical, responsible, and model of that built in integrity and transparency. And so and not to mention collaboration. We work collaboratively as a natural check and balance system to how we support others. We contend that a single person supporting a single person often is a recipe for disaster in some of these higher frequency spaces. So there's a lot of plateauing that happens, and there's real damage that can be done there. And so we just mitigate that by working in collaboration, and with the commitment on the part of all of our coaches that we grow transparently in the presence of others. And so we continue our own evolutions as we're assisting others with theirs. So it creates this really beautiful, fluid, highly evolved kind of container that we all operate in. And I will tell you, it is the most held and supportive I've ever felt by spirit in this work. And I can't imagine ever going back to one-on-one coaching environments without the support of groups like this. And we see a lot of entities going to this model because it's just so much more effective. Anyway, and if you're interested in knowing more about that, of course, we're always happy to share that. And we do train teams of people to do that. So just reach out to experts at superpowerexperts.com if what we're into intrigues you and you're interested. But regardless, the first thing, I promised you some steps. So today, what I want you to do is look at how you're responding to things in old ways of being, right? Irritation, frustration, all of those are justifiable reactions, right? We're okay with getting irritable. We're far more likely to confess to that than saying that our feelings got hurt, right? But ultimately, underneath the irritation, frustration, and anger is sadness and brokenness and separateness. And when we are willing to face that, we get to choose differently. There's no need to be reacting in situations. There's never an excuse to lose your cool. For sure, if there's some emotion that needs to be worked through, fine, but build a container. Make sure that you're in the right place for that to happen. Work through it with somebody who is gifted in that work and can assist you in it. But to fly off the handle and spew your insecurities at other people is simply a cry for help, and we're happy to help. So really no excuse when these kinds of mechanisms exist. But if you're continually losing your temper with your children, or losing your cool with your spouse or your significant others, or getting into arguments at work, or ego trips, or whatever the friction is that you're constantly creating, recognize that then tells the universe to frame up the projection in a way that supports that. It's this never-ending cycle. And so the only way you can stop it is to come out of that cycle. So for today and for the rest of the week, just really be an observation of yourself, and where are you reacting in ways that maybe don't feel too good? Where are you perhaps being short-term? Where are you standing on a soapbox and defiantly holding a position no matter what somebody wants to say to you? Nothing is threatening. You don't have to worry about people agreeing with you, not agreeing with you. That there's no real threat in every single moment. And when you can kind of get it through every cell of your body that's truth, you get to live in peace, and you get to then harness the flow of intuition and that knowingness, and create the world that on some level you already know exists. But it's challenging to step into when we continue to behave as though the only thing that exists is the previous world. And I know some of that can be confusing, but you can do it. I believe in you. So observe your surroundings, observe your behavior, observe your interactions with others, observe others. Be quick to watch for judgment, right? A lot of times we want to be judgmental or discerning, we'll call it, in educated circles, because we don't like when other people aren't like us, right? It makes us uncomfortable. It makes us wonder if we're okay, and if they're okay, and if we're right or they're right. It's all okay. We can all be right. It's okay. We can all hang out together in our complexities and our contradictions, and we don't have to fight about it. So it's like, come to the light. Everything will be okay. So just watch where you're not operating in your highest frequency in moment-to-moment activities, and then ask yourself, are you willing to change that? Because some of us just aren't. And if you're not, then keep listening and get the tidbits that work for you. And if you are, reach out to us and ask us what that might look like. Go to the Superpower Programs page, sit with that content. There's a video on there where I talk a little bit about the programs. But our people know, with our people, it's always a clear, resonant yes. And if you're feeling that, then reach out and have a conversation with us. Until next time, folks, go out, uncover your superpowers, and change the world. Take care, everyone.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the superpower quiz today.